Conan is super interesting when viewed from the eyes of others.
Yeah. The allure of a pulp character is that they're a force of nature. I don't necessarily want to be in their head.
You can pull in and you can pull out, right? You can modulate the distance from the psychic distance from the character.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Rogues in the House podcast, now on video. And I want to bring up something right away because I had a few people DM me who lamented the fact that we did not have our classic theme music and it just didn't feel right. To which I say, I also don't like that, but we're pretty sure that's what ended up getting some of our episodes removed from platforms, even though it was very clearly public domain music and identified as such. Logan is back on the show today, so this is exciting. Mr. LD Whitney, what the hell's going on? What information did you get about our theme music?
Yeah, I happen to have the email accounts the Spotify goes to. I mean, for a long while, we took kind of a hiatus. I didn't check it as regularly as I did. So part of that's on me. That's fair. But I got a bunch of emails, like, hundreds of emails. Each individual episode had been flagged for the public domain music. They had flagged the music as possibly being, like belonging to someone else, whatever. I think the AI, whatever background thing flagged it because obviously no personal, like real person did it.
Yeah.
And they gave me like 18 days or something to reply. And obviously I didn't do that. The ones that still exist on Spotify are ones I was able to get because they came in like waves. I know that we kind of have the files in different places. So, we are kind of trying to piecemeal back some of those old episodes on Spotify. That said, they all still exist on, I believe, Apple, Google, Podbean, like those random ones as well. So I know Spotify is the most popular one, but last I checked, they were all still existing in other places.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. I mean, the truth is, we don't have our SHIT together, or we hadn't for a while, right? It was all very willy-nilly.
Yep.
And part of why, we had the idea to get James involved is very much has his SHIT together. And, I mean, there's just, we would rather be making the content than not. And,
Yeah.
So let's rock and roll, and we'll see what we can do about those old episodes. We can also make some new ones, dudes, which we're going to do today. But before we get into the topic du jour, we will, as always, take a side quest into the Bazaar of the Bizarre. And I got it right this time. So, folks who have listened to the show know this is our shout out to Fritz Lieber. I still don't know. And it won't matter because I will get it wrong every time I say it now. And what we do is we pull something out from Sword and Sorcery or adjacent broadly, and we all discuss it. And I think we're going to start with James because our man in the chair here has not spoken yet this show. James, what's happening?
I started reading my advanced reader's copy of Blue Fire by Molly Tanzer.
Sweet.
Now, I'm not a huge Jyrell fan. I read the original stories in preparation for that novella coming out, and I had a lot of trouble with them. Really, it boils down to they're very wordy and very interior. And not that there's not room for that in Sword and Sorcery, there absolutely is, but sometimes when I was laying in bed reading Jyrell, I was dreaming. And 3 chapters in, I feel like Tanzer has solved almost every problem I have with that character. So I'm enjoying my time so far.
Yeah, it's I very much get that. A lot of older texts, I mean, even if they're super lyrical and nice, they're just dense and it's work. And I don't mean to say that as a negative thing. Work is good, but I was talking about this with people today in the staff room where it's just sometimes, guys, we need to just break a reading funk and read something easy to get back in the flow of things. And then sometimes we want something with a lot of bite and layers. And so I think an important thing happening in Sword and Sorcery right now is that we have more modern approach to writing and prose. Not entirely, but it's I think that's a good thing And I think it's even a good thing to take a character who is written in a traditional voice and write it in a more modern voice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, which I think we'll probably talk about soon on this very podcast with a particular
Yeah.
someone. So let's not get ahead of ourselves.
I
So
actually think it's interesting you brought that up because I don't know if, the person who handed you the document knows this, but you did pass the document to other people in this room.
I
And
think
I've
that's
looked
okay.
at it. Yeah. And I have never read would you say Jarell? I've never read a Jarell story. I've read CL Moore, but I've read Northwest of Earth, which is like sci-fi, like almost like Firefly meets Lovecraft in a way. Um, so I don't have any experience other than the handful of paragraphs I've read from Tanzer's book. So when I'm done, I will share my perspective, and that might be interesting to some people.
I've only read a couple of Jarell stories, and I read them in anticipation for, I think, Molly's first story she did for the magazine issue 3, 4. I don't know, the one I was featured in as well. And it was cool. It's very cool. Like, I dug it. It was evocative, but yeah, it's not light
Yeah,
reading at this point, but the character's super cool, right? Like, I like that Jarell is this sort of reckless, slight rage machine. Like, she's a cool character. So I love that we're exploring more with her. And so that is on Backer Kit. Is that what it's on?
correct.
It is on backer kit right now, and as usual, they are killing it.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
smoking,
yeah.
smoking the stretch goals. I think it's right now they're at the point where they're trying to fund a second cover by, I'm not going to pronounce the artist's name, but oh my God, what a sweet bit of art they've gotten together for that. All
Yeah,
right.
they always do a good job.
What you got, Logan?
So a couple things, I guess. I don't have a lot of time for video games anymore. I have video games on a shelf
Someone's a
and I
dad.
haven't played them. Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Um, Occasionally I will pull out video games, but I will say I am kind of excited for Gothic 1 remake. I really like the super old crunchy CRPGs, computer RPGs, or it's more like the Morrowind, like Elder Scrolls is like my high fantasy like world if I was going to choose to live in one. Um and it's kind of more along that like Morrowind style where it's very hard. They don't do a lot of hand holding, but it's getting a remake. It's basically just the same game with a graphical overhaul. So good for them. That looks awesome. On the book side, I picked up on a complete whim, mostly because of the cover art. We've talked about cover art very often throughout our podcast and how important it is, especially for sword and sorcery. Um, and I picked up Kingdoms Trembling by M. Stern. It is a DMR release. I believe it's his only release. I think he's appeared in some of their various anthologies. But it is wild. The cover is wild. It's got like this elephant god when like people shooting magic. It's like super weird. And I was
Is that the
just
Brian LeBlanc cover that I saw recently
I
floating
don't believe
around?
it is. I don't think it's Brian LeBlanc. It's someone else. But yeah, he
Okay.
also does awesome covers. It's so wild. It's a lot of imagination. So like I was just feeling in the mood for something that had that, like Clark Ashton Smith kind of, but a lot more of the I don't know, maybe visceral violence and stuff like that. So if you like that kind of aspect in Sword and Sorcery, I would highly recommend it. I'm not all the way through it, but I'm thoroughly enjoying it when I get a chance. So yeah, that's where I am at with Sword and Sorcery.
I'm looking forward to checking that one out. I've acquired a digital copy of that as well.
Cool. Yeah, I've been out of reading Sword and Sorcery for too long, which is kind of stupid when I'm on a Sword and Sorcery podcast that I'm psyched about maintaining. I've been reading some other stuff. I've been reading a lot of horror, and I'm still not at the point where I'm writing modern horror. I suspect that day will come for me. I've got a interesting story in mind that I think would work, but anyways, I'm reading a book called The Darkest Deep by Chris Butera, who happens to be the editor at Heroic Signatures. So I've worked with Chris for a few different stories on Savage Sword of Conan. He's a great dude, really easy to talk to. You start kind of broing out immediately about regular interests. And so he bought my books and I bought his. And it's gripped me pretty well. It is I don't know if Lovecraftian, I'm not through it yet, but it's essentially a dude who is a salvage junker who is going through this tunnel made of a special glass that essentially was a train route underwater that would go from New York to London. And anyways, this whole thing was a catastrophe and it didn't work out, but they're sending salvage people in to get stuff, right? And there's a little bit of world building behind the scenes, like what happened to this world? Why did they build this thing? Really cool character study. It's a very close third person point of view. And I am digging it. So if you dig, horror, slightly sci-fi, there's sci-fi elements, but that is a good one to check out. The Darkest Deep. I have to just kind of briefly touch on the fact that Masters of the Universe film has come out. I talked about it last week, my anticipation for the thing. I really did enjoy it. Solid 7 out of 10. I only removed 1 point to be snooty because Merman's not really in it. So. And I'm a big Merman fan. But it's actually refreshing to see that this film was largely embraced by fandom and enjoyed. People are very enthusiastic. The general public, not so much. It tanked pretty bad. And it's interesting. We could talk about the new models of entertainment rollouts, but like I really think that this is a film where the box office is almost bonus to what they were intending to do, because this is Amazon and Mattel, and this is the same company that does Rings of Power, which can't possibly make money. It's fodder for the streaming and for the merchandise and all that stuff. So I don't know if it's actually considered a success by them, but they're kind of like, yeah, cool, man. This is icing on the cake. I don't know. We'll see. A movie that tanks, is not an appetizing thing to produce sequels for, but the movie itself was good. And if it's all we ever get, it really was a nice piece of cake. It was sweet. It was as wholesome as I wished. It is not super pushy or preachy. And here's the thing I love the most. I haven't heard a ton from the Chud Brigade online of people saying it's, anti-masculine or all these other things I was expecting. I didn't hear people get really upset about race swaps, which those folks usually lose their minds about. So I'm giving a little golf clap to just fandom overall that I didn't. My enjoyment of the film was not mired in weird, toxic nonsense.
Sure.
So yeah, yay for that. And it was great. I saw it with my son. He was almost even emotional at a point for me where I was like, oh my God, we're getting a bit of a full circle moment here. And so yeah, I dug it. I'm happy it worked.
On your full circle moment, we're expecting our first child right now. And
congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm super excited. We're both excited.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at my board game collection because I haven't had time for board games or RPGs for so long, and I won't for a very long time. But eventually, baby will be old enough, and I'm just really. I was telling Eden how I'm so excited for that weekend where our child looks at the Twilight Imperium 4th edition box and is as enamored by the Lion Man as I was, and then we set it up and take over the living room for an entire week. And so I'm very much looking forward to that day. 10-ish years from now, probably.
Sure. Yeah.
I love that the cleaning lady has arrived on Logan's stream. I love it.
Oh, that's so funny.
There's something Spinal Tap about that. I love it.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, James, I mean, I mean, your child's probably going to need to be a good 14, 15, 35
Man.
before you're playing Twilight Imperium,
Yeah,
but
I used to play that once a year with my friends, and I just gave up. It's too much of it. It took days,
yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
which
Yeah,
is cool in its way, man. I
right.
mean,
Conceptually, it's cool, but Logan don't have time for that.
yeah, coming
I
from a
played it one time,
Yeah.
and it was the simplest scenario with 3 players. It took me 3 days to read
Whew.
through the rules and watch YouTube videos to
Ugh.
prepare, and then it took us about 12 hours to get through the simplest
Yeah,
scenario of
yeah.
nonstop gameplay.
That's
you gotta
wild.
respect the stones on that,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
Like, imagine designing that,
Right? Yeah.
right?
A genius, really, but just not
Yeah,
for me.
yeah, or just somebody with just insane attention to detail and
Yep.
hyper processing. Because as a guy who designs games, I don't have time for that. I certainly don't have time to play games that I don't design anymore. Twilight Imperium's not on the list, but that's awesome.
My best friend who I lived with at the time, he played a game. He played it like a game, right? He wanted to win. Like there's objectives. For anyone out there, there are objectives, right? And he always won. But everyone else justified them losing by saying, "Oh, we're playing it for the story. We're creating our own story." It's like, no, you're just losing. That's what you're doing. But
Yeah.
yeah.
The story of the board game, guys.
Yeah, yeah, story of the board game. Yeah. But anyway.
Well, yeah, that's exciting. Yeah, I bet my boy likes to play Monopoly a lot, and I'm like, I desperately need to get. I mean, I have other games, but I got to relearn some to get him on something else that's not that piece of crap.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not.
Yay,
So
capitalism.
Teaching them capitalism
Yeah.
young.
Yeah. Teach me, like, you get so angry so quick in that game.
Yeah,
It's just,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And it can last forever too. Like, yeah. That was
But
always my
that's-
problem.
Monopoly is just as hardcore as Risk.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Risk, I don't know. Maybe you get a history. Oh well. Yeah. Anyways, that's just a point of view, guys, which makes me think, hey, we should talk about point of view. James pitched this topic for today about point of view, and obviously we will have that steeped in sword and sorcery and adjacent. And Logan and I immediately really liked that idea for a topic. I will start by just saying that I think point of view is perhaps the most important thing or lesson that an amateur writer needs to kind of get locked down. There's other smaller bits, but getting a sense of point of view, I think, is the thing that will really, like, you could write 100,000-word manuscript and you could have great aspects of your writing, but if your point of view is not figured out, then you've got yourself a giant pile of crap, I think, and perhaps
yeah.
unfixable.
I started writing, or I guess reading as like a thriller novels. I got, even in my office, I have some back here, and I have To Walk on Worlds over there. Um, but in a typical contemporary thriller novel, there are hard scene breaks, and oftentimes, I would say almost like 85%, 90% of the time, a hard scene break means you're going to shift perspective. One of my favorite authors is James Rollins. He writes really elaborate action scenes. It's kind of like Indiana Jones meets James Bond, which is like, if you know anything about me or listened to me talk before, that's very up my alley. Um, and he'll have one action scene shift through possibly 3, 4 different perspectives, sometimes the villain's perspective. And so you're seeing something happen from different angles. And you're also seeing how the individual characters are reacting, maybe internally, externally, to things happening on like the set piece, right? I love that. Now, obviously, that's like a 500-page novel. So, like in a short story, which I write the most, that's obviously probably excessive. But I do like to include more than one perspective when I write a short story, because I think, like, if you think back to like the classic sword and sorcery stuff, like it's basically like third person omniscient. We don't really do a lot of internal, seeing things through people's eyes. But when I write, I like to think of my character like they're inhabiting a space, a world, whatever, and they're each going to have their own, I don't know, opinions, perspectives, on what's happening or how the world works or each other. And I think that makes world building easier, I guess, because you can bake in complexity. I think James, you mentioned this in our chat. Like when I wrote the first Jengar and Yala are from two very different parts of the world, and they see each other differently. Um, and I like to play with that. So I'm very pro multiple perspectives, and even sword and sorcery, even in a short story, I think it makes it more rich.
I have really strong feelings about POV. It is probably what defines my writing style, even in sword and sorcery. My
Same.
novels are dark fantasy, but I have always been inspired by Howard and then by other pulp fantasy that I've read since. And the function of POV isn't just to necessarily, like, that's where we start, is putting people into different shoes. I definitely work within a third person limited where
Mhm,
you're in their
mhm.
skin. Um, but then this is something we focused a lot on when I was doing my creative writing training in undergrad, was you can pull in and you can pull out, right? You can modulate the distance from the psychic distance from the character. So the way this would get expressed in Sword and Sorcery is if you're writing a short story and even within the same POV, you are really inside an internal thought. And that might just be a paragraph because it's SNS and we're trying to stay external for the most part. You pull back out for the action scene, the fight scene. Or maybe I've seen some more recent authors that I've been reading, they will do the opposite and they'll go really close into a fight. And then so the fight's less about the action and more about the emotional impact that it has on the character. The notion of carnage as an emotional force almost. I've seen that kind of happen a lot. Walking it even further, we switch POVs, something that I will do in my writing. It's at its extreme in my first book, Ashen Rider, which is like if Sword and Sorcery were written by 3 different literary fiction authors, and you have 3 narrative threads happening in that story. There is your traditional third person limited, which is in the present tense, not the present tense literally, like in terms of technical, but in terms of where we're at in the narrative chronologically, this is the normal through line. And then we have a first person narrative, which is retrospective, looking back, and it often shifts into the third person because it is a dream wizard journaling his experiences and how he has witnessed and experienced different parts of the story. So sometimes he's speaking from his retrospective point of view, sometimes he is past tense narrating for somebody else on their behalf. And then there is and this was a controversial thing during the development of the novel, but there was a second person section, which is a character conversing with another character and telling them how they came to be uh, at the point that they're at in the story. And then everything just kind of merges together. And the reason why things like this can work really well for sword and sorcery and for heroic fantasy is because those different POV styles aren't just for shits and giggles. It's not just to flex your writing muscles, although it does strain the writing
Yeah.
muscles. It is because those different narrative threads have completely different psychic distances. They have different purposes.
Mm.
And so for the second person example, the reason why I made that decision in a pulp inspired story is because the character who it was concerning had done some very terrible things. And the whole point of the plot is, can that person be redeemed? And second person gives the character an opportunity to take a step back and to put you in their shoes. So they're kind of withdrawing themselves from accountability
Hmm.
while taking the reader And now suddenly all these terrible things that this character has done, you have done. And it's not your fault, because this is what happened and this is how your life unfolded, and the purpose has changed, right? Those sections aren't to be a traditional narrative. It's to create that distance between the character and immediacy and intimacy. Should you do second person in Sword and Sorcery? Probably not, but I technically have done it to decent effect. I haven't gotten people hating on it yet, so.
That's
Well,
so interesting. Oh, go ahead, Matt. Go ahead.
yeah. Well, I think that the second person, honestly, when I'm teaching it in school, I'll say first person, third person. Well, what's second person? Second person is the D&D voice, right? You enter a corridor and you see and this and that. And so I think just with that in mind, it kind of has to be okay in Sword and Sorcery. Yeah, James, to be honest with you, I didn't even consider that angle of point of view coming in where, yeah, depending on which one you choose, the degrees of closeness or behind the eyes or having
Sure.
the reader
Yeah.
sub in for the thing, that's quite interesting.
Yeah,
And
I
I don't
thought
have
the
anything
same
more
thing.
fancy to say about it other than I need to collate my thoughts.
Yeah, I guess it sounds that this is actually the first time I've met James like in a conversational way, so I don't know everything about James's life, which is probably for the best. But it sounds like you've actually had like academic training on writing, where a lot of that comes from. And like I never would have thought of that, because basically my writing skill set is I'll read a book and I'll sit down and try and write exactly how that sounded to me, and like that's all my writing like experience, other than like reports, I guess, which is a completely different skill set.
I will say the training gave me a launch pad and maybe some different ideas than I would have otherwise, but my growth is just reading books and
Sure
trying it
yeah
at this. So I'm with you there.
yeah, I feel like for me, like, and maybe I think I've mentioned this in like the New Edge Discord before, that like sometimes when I'm writing, I'll sit back and like you can tell specifically which book I read last. Not just because like the genre, but like the voice. And so if you were to collect all of Logan's short stories published in all the publications, very few would have the same like voice. I don't know if I have my own ethereal voice. I
So
just
that's
hop from
interesting.
style to style.
Yeah, that in and of itself is interesting. And that's a very common thing that writers will talk about, right? And like I had a similar situation going on as I was sort of developing my craft and what I wanted to do. It's very common, but I think what you're doing is what you have to do, right? You're learning and honing the craft as you go. Um, and really you do have to borrow and rip off and try things. That's the whole goddamn
Absolutely.
process, right? You don't,
Absolutely.
but it is, I've definitely heard of writers who, you know, they will stop reading a particular author when they're writing a book because they don't want to have that leak in too much. They can just feel that, oh, here I am, I'm going with this thing. Like, obviously with me, or like with, my two, I would say as far as voice goes, the people that I've sort of borrowed from the most would be Robert E. Howard and Joe Abercrombie. But I do not read those while I'm writing. It's just a
Yeah.
sort of the impression has been made, and to be honest, it has been a long time since I read Abercrombie. I still didn't even get into the Devils. And with Howard, I read every once in a while, especially when I'm doing research for the gaming projects. But like, there might be the time where you want to remove yourself from that,
Yeah.
but
Absolutely.
at the same time, I don't know. I think it is I think it's a bold and bold's not the word. I think it's good that you're doing it, that you're just kind of gaining that inspiration, trying it out, because
Yeah.
you're saying, I don't know what my voice is. Well, you have it. It's just, it's changing from time to time depending on what you're
Sure.
doing. If you're writing
That-
horror, or if you're writing sword and sorcery, if you're writing romance, the voice is going to change anyways, right? So you're just sort of pooling your influences and letting it fly, which I
Yeah,
think is
that's fair. That's
no
fair.
crime there,
And
man.
I've been, I don't know. I don't like to toot my own bugle. But I've written a lot of stories, and I think all but 5 that I've written are either somewhere or waiting to be somewhere. So I guess like for me, like I know that I'm good at copying another voice. But as a writer, like maybe I haven't synthesized all those voices into one individual voice. Which feels adjacent to this topic.
There's one other point I'll bring up in terms of overall writing, and what I firmly believe is that writing is an old person's game. I
Sure.
don't mean that you have to be
Sure,
old to
sure,
write. I don't mean that you necessarily get better with age,
sure.
but I
But you
do.
do.
I am always amazed when a young person delivers something that is just so
Well, yeah.
mature and advanced. So yeah, I think that, like, just keep going and keep developing and doing your thing, and you're gonna change over time, dude. It
I
makes
know
sense.
we've talked about it before, but I went back and read some of my, like, early stories,
Yeah.
and, like, it's so, like, you can just I don't know, it's almost, like, funny how much my writing has changed since then, yeah, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And I think with developing a voice, and voice is absolutely relevant to the POV conversation. What is voice but just an amalgamation of what we've all read? I mean, I
Sure,
hear
sure.
those arguments of people like, oh, I don't read because I don't want to be infected by other people's voices.
Gotta read,
You're
gotta
never
read.
going to learn what works unless you expose yourself to what people are doing well and what they're doing wrong. When I started writing, everything was just like Steven Erikson fan fiction.
Sure, sure.
Uh, and then I started reading a lot of Stephen King, and then I moved over to that Stephen all the time. And I
Found another
probably have
Steven.
only
Stephen Graham
the
Jones, maybe?
oh yeah, he
Uh,
writes Sword and Sorcery.
Yeah,
he
yeah, 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 he did
he
one of the
does,
Conan stories, yeah.
and you want to talk about a
Sure.
voice? That guy's voice is really unlike anyone. Some people bounce right off of it, but great example. Hugely successful author. Weird, non-traditional voice that you'd expect. And where he got that, who the hell knows, right?
Sure, sure.
I mean, eventually, you read widely, and things you'll borrow from so many places, and I mean, you have to learn every project. Like, I just finished my second published book, and it is a million times different than the first book, but I think the authorial voice, there's still a through line, and then, you know, the other book, the new book, has like a bunch of other stuff that's just going to be unique to it. And I'm not going to hide it. I got very fascinated with Scottish Highland dialect because I was watching the Outlander TV show.
But yeah.
And I'm like, I need to write that in a book, and I need to not look like an idiot doing it. So how do I do that?
Yeah. Oh my God. Dialogue is such a, honestly, I'm more inspired by film and television for dialogue than I am from other books. Yeah, when I'm writing characters, a lot of it is just, I have to kind of hear it.
Sure.
And of course, you hear that when you're reading other books. And I mean, there's very much an art to it. But yeah, dialogue is I need to hear it.
We'll have to do a dialogue. We'll have to do a dialogue on
Yeah.
a dialogue episode.
Mm.
Your voice is going to significantly change depending on who your narrator is. And that might
Sure.
mean the POV character, but like in the case of that first person journalizing, retrospective character, in those chapters, then that wizard, the dream wizard, was the narrator. So that made the voice of those chapters much different than the voice of the third person limited characters, which are narrated by the character they're viewing from. So your authorial voice could change from character to
Sure.
character, and especially if you're changing your POV methods in between characters.
Which, I mean, I think this speaks to, like, I mean, it's probably like old hat advice, but sometimes I see people say, oh, stay reading your genre or don't read in your genre or whatever. But like you mentioned it before, you have to read widely. Because like if you only stuck to classics, and I'll admit I read a lot of classic short stories, like or like vintage pulp short stories. That's kind of like my jam right now in my life. But none of those old ones published in like adventure weird tales that I'm aware of, they don't change POVs at scene breaks. It's kind of just like third person omniscient throughout most of those stories, and you never experience like you Matt mentioned Joe Abercrombie, and I think out of most books or all books I've read, maybe his changing between characters like Glocta and Logan
Yeah.
and Giselle all have very distinct styles in their perspective, in the way they speak or narrate what's going on. And you never experience that if you only read Robert E. Howard's Conan,
Yeah,
right?
I think Abercrombie is really springboarding off of what George Martin did in A Game of Thrones.
Sure, I would
And
argue
I think,
better, but
yeah. Oh, yeah. I think you're right. Martin's a great writer, but
right.
Abercrombie gets voice and character, unlike anyone else in fantasy, as far as I'm concerned. I think like a high compliment that I would pay would be when you have chapter points of view and you finish one chapter and you're really invested in this character, and then it switches to another character and the voice is distinct, and you're a little bit at first, that feeling of, oh, bummer, I wanted to keep going with this other one. But by the third page, you're like, oh, who's this new person? This is a different voice. This is a different feel. And then you're totally into it. And if you can do that, that's the thing. And
Yeah.
that's what I tried to do when I finally started, experimenting a little more with point of view, because guys, we get all this writing advice, and I am very grateful for sort of the writing advice that I've read or heard and how strict it was. And the reason for that is because it put me in a box where I could, where I had walls, and I had to work within a certain thing. And I was like, oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't have multiple points of view in a short story. I can't do it. And as always with this stuff, it's writing advice is usually not a don't do it. It's a don't do it poorly advice. And I think because I had to contain myself, that allowed me to learn those things very clearly. And then I knew when I could frig around. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's be careful what advice you take. And just really, as I said earlier in this episode, it's that point of view is really important to get nailed down, because your story can't work unless it is.
That brings up a good point too, because we're talking about POV, and of course the natural lane of conversation is multiple POVs, changing POVs. Even if you have one POV, you need to understand who that narrator is and what their relationship is to the reader. You need to understand psychic distance at, different times of the story. How close are we? How much do we know about what the character knows? I've heard arguments. I follow a podcast from a professional writer, and he has a good idea on what good writing looks like, but it's very like specific, and this can't be the only way it looks, right? So he'll talk about, oh, it's third person limited, so I should know everything that the character knows. But, well, what about our unreliable narrator? Now we're going back to, well, what is the narrator's goal? And so if you have those things nailed down for a single POV story, well, that's going to, like, I get bored with, first person, single POV, I guess, generalist kind of style prose where it's very just a plot. It's just a plot on paper, and a lot of people like that, and that's cool. But I want more. I want to know who this person is. I want them to hide things from me or be uncomfortable with me in some way, or just put everything that they are out on the page. But like with Conan, there's very little interiority in those stories, but I always feel like I know what's going on in Conan's head because of the way he acts.
Sure.
and the simplicity of his morals and of his moral compass, and lack thereof.
I so I have things to say on that because you know I've been fortunate enough to write Conan stories. And one of the first things I decided was I am not writing anything from Conan's point of view. I mean, not first person, certainly, bleh, but definitely not even going to do third person limited with Conan. Now, I don't know what the future holds if I'm going to have to break from that, but I will fight against doing so because to me, Robert E. Howard can write inside Conan's head, and others can really make you believe they're doing that. And this is not a slight against them. It's that they're so good they can do that thing. But who Conan is, I mean, I think that's down to Robert E. Howard. At least for me, I don't want to touch that. What I want to do is I want to set the point of view with people around him who experience this dude and who have their own thoughts and their own bits about him. Conan is super interesting when viewed from the eyes of others,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That to me, and the two stories I did, one was from Niord, who was the chieftain of the Vanir, the Aesir in Frost Giant's Daughter. And then I dug up Nestor from the Halls of the Dead fragment. And that gives you the point where, well, let's see who these guys are. Let's have it sound like Robert E. Howard's setting, but also let's get right behind their eyes as they witness this force of nature that is Conan the Cimmerian.
Yeah, I think we actually kind of talked about this way back when
I'm sure
we
we
talked
did.
about, I think, the Jason Momoa movie, I believe is what it was. Where, like, to me, the allure of a pulp character is that they're a force of nature. Um, and that I don't necessarily want to be in their head. Like James mentioned, you kind of get where they're coming from, right? From their actions. Contemporary writing has kind of moved away from that, which is fine, right? It's evolved. And to continue to have that spectacle of Conan being a force of nature, you need to be able to see it from the perspective of a normal person or someone not on the level of Conan, because they need to be in awe of the decisions, of the fighting style, of the potential for violence, whatever it is.
Right.
And that's what we want the reader to feel, and that's kind of where I'm on. So I'm fully on board with your perspective on that,
Yeah.
maybe for a different reason, but
Well, even and Howard did it himself. I really need to reread Beyond the Black River. I mean, I have reread it, but that's a story where it seems more like you're behind the eyes, if not behind the
yeah,
eyes, a little more focused on
Balbus.
Balthus, where and that was the inspiration for me for a lot of things, is just that aren't these guys cooler or more intense or overwhelming or awe-inspiring when you have more of an everyman kind of seeing it? Um,
I
and I
believe
think,
the Which Shall Be Born is similar. There's some more closer
yeah,
Conan scenes, but it's got some
yeah,
scenes
yeah,
like that too.
yeah. And I mean, I would say dramatically that I am not that interested in omniscient sword and sorcery. Doesn't mean I don't think it's good. I actually think it's hyper important that we have writers still doing it, because that's part of the tradition. It's just for me, the thing that I want to bring to it, and not just me, but is the that sort of closeness, that sort of like, people are just people, but the world is sword and sorcery, and the gambits they get wrapped up in are very sword and sorcery, um,
Yeah,
but not so
yeah,
much I want it close. I want, I always make this funny, like I want them to like shit themselves or something, just because I want it to be very human and bring that sort of grounded, not potty humor. It's not about that. It's just,
yeah,
I
yeah.
just want a real sort of feeling. I want their stomach to hurt. I want
Which
their
does feel very Abercrombie influenced, since
right.
you
And
mentioned it
I
earlier.
absolutely would
Yeah,
have pulled from that, but it's
yeah.
also that really spoke to me when I read it, right?
Sure.
The
Right,
idea that
right.
we've got these characters who are real, and you might be in the middle of a real bad situation, but you got to take a piss,
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
and I'm not saying make it grimdark, like, oh, now they're all infected and one sword swipe with a bit of shit on it and they're done. Like, not that, just,
Yeah.
I don't know, give me reasons to feel, get it more human as opposed to mythic and
Yeah.
heroic. I love
Well,
that stuff's there. It's just not as much for me these days.
as an exceedingly average human, I really enjoy seeing things that are like spectacular from the perspective of an exceedingly average human. Um, I really like the idea of like, so I don't know if anyone, I know Matt's not a fan of Halo, but I used to play Halo all the time in high school. And like in the
I'm not a
games,
fan. I just,
you are Master Chief, right? You are the force of nature. But like I know the show wasn't quite as successful as they wanted it to be, and I know they changed a bunch of stuff, and I didn't even watch most of it. But like that's another situation where you want to see the superhero through the eyes of the person, right? And maybe Marvel should take a little from that too. Like I don't know. Like sometimes you don't need to be Peter Parker or Iron Man to get the story through.
Who does that really well is Lord of a Shattered Land by Howard Andrew
Sure.
Jones, that
Yeah.
first Hanavar book. The way that he uses POV, first of all, because the book is it looks like a normal epic fantasy book, but then every chapter is a short story with its own, little plot and different characters that matter. The way that he moves across different POVs is extremely effective for generating momentum and conflict and tension. I'm very slowly making my way through it because every time I read one of those stories, I feel like I need to study it and absorb it. I just finished one that it was in the perspective of like the bard psychic, what's his name, Antares,
Yeah. Something
and
like that.
that story, we got none of the really what Hanuvar was doing while Antares was getting in a lot of trouble. And at one point he's getting tortured, and he could be at risk of getting killed, and there's like ghosts happening, and Hanuvar does all the Hanuvar stuff off screen, but because we're getting it from normal guy following the hero, it was a totally different kind of story that, if we were following Hanuvar through that story, it would have been good, but we've already had that 3 times before this. So now
Yeah.
we're seeing a totally different view of this world. The way that he walked into a situation, like posing as someone else, like
Sure.
that kind of bravado and confidence. And I get this thing when I'm watching movies a lot where people are in difficult situations and maybe they're an expert at what they do. And I just think like, man, I'm glad that character knows what they're doing. Cause if this were like a video game and I had to figure it out, I'd have no idea what to
Sure.
do.
And
Yeah.
actually, I think that's an interesting thing that you brought up, and maybe you didn't realize it. So, like, obviously, collections and anthologies, I guess collections in this case, technically, I guess I would call Howard's work a collection, even though it does also read like a novel, kind of like To Walk on Worlds. It's still a collection. Yours is more loosely about the world itself as opposed to a character, but
Yeah.
um, and I think self-publishing or these kinds of collections is like a legitimate, part of the sword and sorcery community. Because I mean, I do it myself. I'm working on that as well. But the perspective there, you mentioned that you had 3 stories straight Hanuvar, and then you get a break seeing it through someone else. And I guess this might be aging me. I'm almost 40, which just seems unbelievable.
No.
But back in the LimeWire days, I really prided myself in making a good CD, like a mixed CD, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And collections are a lot like that. Anthologies, when we put together the Book of Blades anthology, it's a lot like that. You want your highs and your lows, and you want to intersperse them, and it can be exhausting. Like I read through a lot of like Argosy Press or Altus Press that puts out all those vintage reprints of pulp stories, but they can get kind of exhausting where you want to take a break because it's the same character doing the same thing and the formula starts to
Yeah.
show through. So if you are a writer um, who is striving to make something like that, really take into account, like, do I need to put a new perspective into this next story to give the reader a break, or something different to snack on?
I think that like what Howard is doing there, and he did it with far more of a plan in mind. And now I know Hanover existed. He started as more so short stories, and then he built these as novels. Um, but I think I've gone on record as saying that I don't give a shit about plot, and I really don't. It just needs to function. Okay, for me, I put work into it. I make sure it all wraps up, but character is storytelling to me. And why not tell your grand story through these points of view? So what ended up happening with me through a very like clinical ADHD way that I didn't realize at the time when I started writing these things is that I kind of have to write the way that I'm doing it. I don't know if I could map out a trilogy. I don't think I could do it, and I
No,
don't want
it's
to.
difficult.
I have never in my life stumbled upon something creatively that has worked as well for me in terms of actually producing the thing, and the product itself, the final thing, than what I'm doing, which is it's very much like what Howard did, except mine's a little more ADHD in that I am writing cool stories about characters that I have conjured. I have a basic overall arc, but to me, it's what situations can I put these characters in? What places? How can I push the overall narrative just slightly, nudge it ahead? But each chapter is a nugget and a complete thing. Because I don't know, man. Like that to me is what storytelling is getting in and getting close to a character. And so it's and Howard said this too with where he's talking about a season of television, right?
Yeah,
You've got
yeah,
all your
yep.
pieces in play, you've got your characters in play, um, and then you say, all right, so what's this season? And so I don't necessarily think I'm doing that with my books, but what I am doing is what stories do I want to tell with these characters? Where do I want to see them? And then I can pretty easily push my overall narrative forward.
Sure.
And then you get this crazy blend of discovery writing / planning. And to me, it has just landed on magic. Like I so immensely enjoy this weird ass format that I've landed on that any editor would have said, you can't do that. And they're
Sure,
probably
sure.
right. I don't think I could sell mainstream, but god damn if it isn't like my whole thing has come down to selling point of view and jumping into point of view. And with each story I write, especially if it's a reoccurring character, it's easier. It's easier to do the more that I do it.
Character is fine. I do not read for character. I read for plot. This
Yeah,
was a very
you are
early
more of
episode.
you're more of a
Uh,
plot guy, you're a thriller
yeah,
guy, and that
yeah.
makes
I
sense.
want to see things happen, and I want to go places I haven't been, and I want to experience things I've never done. And who that's through typically doesn't matter, as long as the things that are happening to them are interesting.
Yes, but you know how to present character.
Yes, that's all.
Maybe
I mean,
maybe
you
that
have
is
to. I think you
yeah,
have to do both.
yes.
But like, I guess where you approach a project might come from a different end. But the finished project it should include some mixture of,
I
kind
agree.
of like when we talk about Brian Murphy's 12 points of Sword and Sorcery. It doesn't have to be everything, not all the time, but it has to be some of them, and most of the time, right? Yeah. Um,
Vibes at the end of the day sometimes.
right. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
You bring up a good point with a mixture of plot and character too, because as an editor who asks people to write character-driven fantasy, what I see a lot of in rejected submissions is I call it plotless meandering, where it's a lot of interiority, a lot of thoughts, and a lot of feelings, but nothing happens. And I feel like lit fiction and upmarket fiction can get away with this because it's maybe what those readers are expecting. But fantasy is a plot driven genre. And so even when we're asking for a character driven narrative, plot is still equally as important. So I guess part of POV, like you said, Matt, you want to tell these narratives by telling them through the POV, and that's something that I'm constantly thinking about. I always start when I'm crafting a tale is I have here's where it starts, here's where it ends, and here's all the crazy stuff that happens in between. That's a plot. But what makes it matter is the characters doing it, experiencing it.
Yeah.
So
a lot of what
understanding how to communicate that through their point of view, right? That's what effective storytellers do.
Right. I think what I'm saying when I say that is that I think plot's the easy part. I think plot is the unoriginal part. I think plot is the part that most people have done before in some way or another. And there's expectations with it. There's things that if you frig around with, it will actually turn people way off. You know, it's like those classic movies like, yeah, it was awesome. And then the ending was trash, you know? So plot for me is, that's easy to generate and to like almost just cut and paste little bits, be like, oh yeah, we can't have that here because this has to go here. And I find that part of the storytelling slightly a drag. I don't mean I don't like it. I actually love doing the problem solving, you know, when you're just kind of thinking about your work in progress and you're like, oh yeah, I have to get here. How do I get there? And blah, blah, blah. But I really think, just in circling around to our topic, is that point of view and character are just so married, and that plot can be this other thing. And then ideally we get all these things together and they have a good time.
So
Yeah.
this is super interesting. So the other day I just stumbled upon this just like 2 days ago. Matt Stone and Trey Parker, South Park fame, I guess they gave like a writing seminar, right? And they said that their one rule, right? You've got scene, and if you have the next scene and between those scenes, the phrase you have is "and then," it's bad. It should be "scene, but scene," or "scene, therefore scene." So like something happens, but this next thing complicates it, or this scene happens, therefore this next complication arises. And that's where the intersection of your character and because each character is probably going to deal with that complication in a different way. And I mean, perspective is going to help communicate that as well. I just thought that was very interesting. And like, that's typically how I write without ever having seen their seminar. Like, and I think this is something I learned from thrillers, is that there should always be like a complication. It's not just a chain of events that happen. There has to be some kind of monkey wrench in the thing to make a really good plot, and then to make the story complete is how your character reacts to the monkey wrench in the plot.
And just thinking in terms of scene is important. That will help you avoid what James was talking about, where you have these just, you know, bloviating of characters and, oh, we're being characters and we're talking about ourselves. I guess that's fine if you have a gigantic novel. You still need to push things forward. But yeah, that's the other bit with, I don't know, as long as the scenes are moving and those are interesting, you can do crazy time jumps and just get on with stuff.
Yeah. That was something that was a big revelation to me as I started like studying the authors I was reading, instead of just reading for fun, is that a scene is only the important stuff. There's other things that happen between scenes that, one, you don't want to read about, and two, the author doesn't want to write about. So the scene just ends and we just move to the next important thing. And as a younger writer, that was a huge, like a revelation to me.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You mentioned the scene break all the way at the beginning of the episode. And I just released a review I did on Swords and Deviltry that I recorded like 4 months ago today. And my biggest complaint with that collection is Fritz Lieber will not give me a freaking break.
Yeah.
He just goes on and he goes on. And
that's so funny.
There's so much that I like in those stories, but he never lets me breathe. And then we get them walking between places all the time in Ilmed and Linkmar. As a big
Fafhrd and Grey Mouser fan, I hate that book. I think the first 2 stories are a waste of time, and the only good one is the last third.
I've heard that sentiment.
And just this morning before work, I finished Lean Times in Lankmar from Swords in the Mist, I believe, which is very funny. But it's the same thing. It goes on and on and on and on and on and on without a break. And like, it kind of leaves me as like an ADHD thriller reader, like, when's the next thing gonna happen, guys? Like,
yeah. I mean, my best writing advice or storytelling advice in general is take all the boring crap out.
Yeah.
Remove
Yeah.
the crap. If it's not really truly good, move it along. And sometimes the boring crap, let's bring it back to the potty humor for a second. Sometimes it's someone whose stomach hurts and they got to take a dump. That can
Yeah.
actually be quite compelling.
Right.
It's the avoiding of the info dumps and and that I think is actually a really important part of point of view too, is because again, you get amateur writers, and I'm not dumping on amateur writers. I probably still am one. It's just there's you just have to move things along. You have to keep it moving. And that is honestly something that Howard Ender Jones, he said that in one way or another to me. It's just keep things moving. And with the way
Yeah.
he was writing his stories and the way that I have approached my overall series, I have a great excuse never to dwell on the crappy stuff because I will just write another story that takes place 3 months down the road with different people and move things along, right?
Well,
Mhm.
fantasy is such an interesting example of this, I think, like with amateur writers or people like who are into the genre, because you can come at it from kind of two different angles. One, your high fantasy, which is like bricks of world building, which a lot of people really love. But I also see people who are asking for advice on like Reddit or maybe a Discord or whatever, who appear to have spent ages world building trying to write a sword and sorcery story, and we've talked about this before. Matt shaking his head. The world building doesn't matter in a sword and sorcery story.
Unless your
With
story's
perspective,
awesome.
right? Yeah, like it adds flavor. But I guess I'm of the opinion the world building itself is not the point of sword and sorcery. It's the characters moving through the world and the things that happen to them or the things they do. Um, it's flavor. Matt, I think you do a great job of just, I don't know shit about your world, really, just what's written in it. And what's written in it is exactly what I need to know for the story, and that's it,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. And
Um,
that's my best advice
yeah,
overall for that is
yeah,
whatever your story needs, include that in your world building at that time. You
yeah,
can have your Bible or whatever. I sure as
yeah.
shit am not going to do that. But, um,
It's just a
like
different
just,
skill set. It's a different
yeah,
end product, right?
I actually think I think it would be a special skill set to start with the world building and then make it a compelling story. People have done it. They do it. And I think this is some neurodiversity, uh, stuff that we touch on, right? Different approaches to things. But for me, oh God, I would be completely hung up on the world building itself, where it's like, it's much easier to just kind of add the ingredients you need at the time, and then your world becomes a thing. Especially if you don't
Mm-hmm.
release it at first, right? Or if you're
Yeah, yeah.
a weirdo like me who wrote things over 10, like a decade, and then suddenly you have a world because you built it for what your stories need, right?
I don't have a world building Bible, and at this point, with 200,000 words of published Dusk and Dawn stuff, I think I should probably make one because I'm constantly forgetting like which words have accents and different characters, and then
That's a good point. And
I have to
Sure,
search
sure.
my fiction to
yeah,
find
yeah,
the right
I'm
spellings.
running into the same thing myself, where I'm like, I got to reread my 2 books before I move forward. I know it, but there's definitely details that I'm gonna
Yeah,
check
yeah.
on again. Yeah. Well, and James too, you're coming at it. I mean, it's actually super interesting, this sort of trio here, where you've got Thriller Man over here, and you've got Steve Erickson guy over here, and you've got Farts in Fantasy over here. It's like it really is. You want to talk about point of view? That's 3 different potential approaches, right?
Hey, I'm not above farts and
Yeah,
fantasy.
yeah.
I have a sword and sorcery story that I really like that starts with my almost published character. He's coming soon. Tarmoon the Roach.
Ooh, the
The first
roach.
story I ever wrote of him, he was in an outhouse dealing with some bad pork when he gets ambushed and has to fight his way through with his pants off.
Great, man.
So,
That's awesome.
It's a tight spot.
Matt
it
loves
is.
a good turd in his story.
Yeah, that first draft was full of potty humor, and I remember reading it to my wife, just like, "Is this too much?" And she's just shaking her head, and I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna rewrite it."
In some ways, it's childish, right? It's like, oh my God, okay, farts are pooping, but also it's something we do every day, as
Sure.
long as you have enough
Yeah.
fiber.
You're gonna have
Um,
a lot more of that in your future when your child comes.
Oh yeah,
Poop's part of
yeah,
life, man. Everyone does it, and we're weird about it. So to me, that's a
Yeah.
great gateway for humor or even just humanity.
I taught my toddler who she likes to take her diaper off just because she's a toddler, and I taught her to make, like, a fart noise with her mouth while sticking her butt in her mom's face. It's beautiful.
Oh man,
Gender roles
so
be damned, Logan. Throw that shit out.
I'm so excited to join the club.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I adore my child, yeah, but yeah.
James, do you have did you have any notes scribbled down about topics you wanted to touch before we start breaking off here? Were there some questions or things you wanted to add to this discussion? We kind of just blasted in here.
Yeah.
The burning thing in my head is we talked a lot about how Howard um does the omniscient thing and maybe like he's not a good example of multiple POV, but
Robert E.
that's not been my reading of it. Like I think of the Phoenix on the Sword
Sure,
and how that starts with
that's
the
true.
bad guys plotting. And while it might be omniscient, and you're not in their heads, you are getting different flavors
is
of the
true,
world,
that
and
is
he
true.
does that a lot.
Yeah, and he
So
does a really good job of doing omniscient and getting into other heads where that's a tricky thing to do.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like when I think of Howard, I know it's mostly omniscient stuff that you're hearing, but it doesn't feel terribly far removed from the character.
And he
yeah,
does
he
a
has a good psychic distance.
Yeah, and I really like how he shows us what the villains are doing, which is something that happens a lot in thriller novels. I don't know. I haven't read much epic fantasy, to tell you the truth. So I don't know how that plays out. But I really like getting to know the villains. Because I think a good villain almost makes the story more than a good hero. I think Matt's Maxis is a good example. He's obviously a villain in his own world, although he just gets put in situations where maybe his goals are positive, like a net positive. Um, yeah, yeah.
I read Maxis as a hero, but I'm not on the second book yet.
Well, that's funny.
Well, the trajectory is he's more heroic in a on paper sense, I think, as we go. But I always say the best way to describe him is he will be your best friend as long as you don't step in his way, right? As soon as you do that, as soon as you interfere with his ends, he will, without mercy, eliminate you.
Yeah.
See, as a working class fella, it it's funny. I say that, and then I was talking about my when you go to school for writing, you are electing to be a college educated working class person.
Sure. I mean, it's not
So-
that much different from being an archaeologist, tell you the truth.
Or a teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what really has me bought into Maxis as a hero is the fact that Lack Manon walks away very, very wealthy for his troubles.
Yeah. He
I
does.
respect a guy who pays his underlings.
Sure.
Well, that's it. I mean, Max is a guy. One thing I'm exploring going forward is like he can just actually create gold if he wants, right? Like he's going to be able to do a thing where he can basically own the economy if he wants. But he doesn't, he's not a guy who wants to run a city or anything. He just wants to find out stuff, and he will do it whatever way he can, and he will do it with the paths of least resistance, right?
Sure.
But yeah, he'll absolutely hook you up. He doesn't want anyone to suffer. It's not a malicious thing. It's just I need answers. I need to be in control of shit. Do not step in my way. And sometimes you're not going to like it. Sometimes I'm going to be on top, and you got to deal with that. Bastards.
Well, guys, we are beyond that hour point.
Sure.
Do we want to move over to Hawk and Wares?
We mentioned that New Age Sword and Sorcery has their Jarell of Dwari novella out. We'll put those in the show notes. That is live right now. I think that'll be good for almost another month.
July 4th.
Yeah. So, check that out. It's I believe they're doing mass market paperback format, right? That's the new hot thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it recently deceased. Now it is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
I would say check that out, because the more people that get involved, the more the signal is boosted, and that folks are going to get more stuff for this, more art, more stories, beautiful covers. So check that one out. Logan, you're on. What do you got?
Yeah. I mentioned earlier in Bazaar the Bazaar, M. Stern's Kingdoms Trembling. I'm really enjoying it. I think it came out like this month. I just saw the cover and I was really struck by it. Having never read, I never do this. I research my authors extremely well because I want to know that I'm going to like the thing I'm buying. That's kind of how I budget myself. And this was a complete whim purchase based solely on the cover, and I love it. So you can check that one out. Um, I guess if we're doing our own wares, Jangar #1, Slaves of the Mind Mage is out.
Jenga.
Yeah. I am very close to finishing. So this may come as a surprise to some people, but I made this commitment before actually having written the stories, so I'm writing them in real time.
Oh, been there. It's a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah.
fun.
Hell yeah,
So
dudes.
So stressful.
yeah. Jangar #2 is almost done, but it may not be out on July 1st, maybe in that first week. So yeah, look out for that. It's called Citadel of the Winged Queen. And you can also find my Pulp Adventure collection, Honor Among Rogues. I've got a recent influx of readers because I check my sales every day. But I still only have 15 reviews. So if you have it, reviews, please.
Oh, reviews.
Yes.
My God, so important. Also, Logan, special shout out. Your covers look sick, dude.
Thanks.
Yeah, man. Real good job.
We've talked about this, and then like obviously there are sections of sword and sorcery moving forward, but I seem to be clinging to the past, and that my whole brand, I feel like, is doing the same thing that people did. I mean, obviously more modern, right? But like the covers are meant to mimic, even the formatting of the book is meant to mimic Night Over the Solomons, right? They're the Tarzan books. Like it's supposed to look like that and give you that feeling. That's just what I
Advertising is
do.
important.
Yeah.
Getting the word out there is important. Asking people to review is important. These are good things, my friend. Art is a shared experience, and we
Yeah.
should try and share it as far as we can, I think.
Absolutely.
James?
Yeah. Okay, so some other things that other people are doing. I just published a book for a debut author. It's his first book. His name is Alex Ward, and the book is a little collection of short stories called The Weight of a Torch. I'm not sure that Sword and Sorcery folks will find what they're looking for in there, but it is very much a cool world building experiment, some dark dungeon diving, very OSR feeling.
I love that.
It's like if Mistborn were OSR.
Okay.
Is kind of where it's getting at. Cool magic
Interesting.
system. And so far we're getting some good reception. He
Good.
just launched it on the 15th, and we sent it out to our ARC readers, which you can join and become an ARC reader and get every book that my small press publishes for free in exchange of just
Wow.
giving our people reviews that we desperately need.
Sure, that's a good deal.
Yeah. And eventually that offer will close once we hit our quota. So get in there. For my stuff, I interjected in your thing, Logan.
Yeah, no.
I also did a rolling release. We do monthly serials on Arcanist Online, and that's how my first book went. It was 45,000 words, which was very manageable. But my second book, Soil, it was supposed to be 45,000 words. It turned into 100. So
Yeah.
I just finished it 5 days ago.
Wow.
My editor just turned in his edits, and it's launching on the 26th.
That's fantastic.
For the last part. So that book will be freely available to anyone to read online, and then eventually the paperback, and maybe a hardcover. I'm still having I have thoughts about paperbacks coming from overseas and how difficult that is on me as a small business owner. But those are coming to BackerKit later this year, probably for Printopia, because I just saw an invite come for that, so that might be an interesting opportunity. And before that, this summer we're doing a big BackerKit, probably July or early August, for the Arcanist magazines, which we have the Literary Fantasy magazine, which Logan will be featured in at some point.
Yeah.
And then also Mordschlag Sword and Sorcery magazine, because I can't stop making magazines. So all that stuff is coming, and I'll put links in the description. And I'm just freaking honored that anybody cares about these stupid things that I do all the time to torture myself. So thank you guys for the opportunity to talk about it.
Well,
Dude,
I'm actually glad
yeah.
you mentioned magazines because I forgot to mention Crimson Quill Quarterly. They had a lot of problems with Amazon. They got
Yeah,
their
they
whole
got dicked around, it
yeah,
sounds like. Yeah.
some AI thing flagged their account for some reason and eliminated all the past issues. They just released their newest issue on Barnes and Noble. Um, I know even on Amazon they didn't have the most reviews in the world, but they're lovely people to work with. I've had 3 different stories with them. Well, 4 now. I have one of this new one that actually Howard Andrew Jones edited for Magician's Skull before it changed hands. So
I'm
I
glad
mean
that's
it's a little more
finally out.
special to
Holy
me. Yeah,
Christ.
yeah.
That's
I've
good,
been holding
man.
on to that for a long time. So please, um, you know, go check out Crimson Quill Quarterly. I think it's only the one issue right now. They're trying to figure out how to get their old issues back up somewhere. I think the one hiccup is Barnes and Noble doesn't have its own review platform. Um,
Ugh.
it's like Amazon, you can rate them 5 stars, leave a review, whatever. Barnes and Noble doesn't have that. So it's literally just word of mouth as far as I understand it. Maybe I'm not quite right, but please check them out. I think the future of Crimson Quill Quarterly would really be happy to have some people pick it up at Barnes and Noble.
Cool, man. Yeah. I mean, all power to them for getting that figured out. That is my nightmare. I put all my eggs in that basket because
Yeah.
I'm technically inept so much and I just don't have the time and bandwidth. So I worry about things like that.
Yeah, I have a deep-seated fear that more automated, what do you call it, moderating, I don't know, is going to start ruining small people like
It
us.
already, hey, yeah,
It's already
look,
starting.
man,
Absolutely.
I think we're done.
Yeah.
And I mean that as broad as you want to take it. So it's but Sword and Sorcery is about fighting back no matter what.
That's true.
So sell direct
Yeah.
and get your fucking royalties that belong to you.
That is what I'm trying to do.
Yes.
Yep.
I highly recommend a lot of people self-publish their stuff and do bug people for reviews and or promote, it's cool. It's fine. It doesn't matter if you do it during crowdfunding or if you do it however. Like it is part of the game, man.
Yep.
Art
Yep.
is a shared experience and you got to get it out there. So me, I don't know, man. I've already pitched a few things. I say buy Logan's books. I say buy James' books. I say check out the new Jarrell novella. For me, what am I doing? I am trying to get book 3 together for the Maxis cycle. I've got a weird handful of stories. I will either have something out end of this year or early next year. I'm kind of juggling. I'm in the midst of a novella that's going to take up a big space of whatever book 3 is, and I've got some other things attached to it, so I'm juggling some things with that. I really appreciate people giving a crap and being excited about whatever happens next in that. In July, I've got a Cormac McArt pastiche. No.
Yeah, Scott
Homage.
Oden's. Yeah.
Scott Oden would be upset I said that. Homage, homage, sorry. Where Cormac McArt and Wolfier are on a little I can't talk much about it. I don't know what I can say. I don't even know if I can say. It's called Isle of Swords, and I believe that is the Heroic Legends ebook release of July. I'm really psyched about it. It turned out great. It was a breeze to write, and I'm immensely honored to do that.
Nice.
Most recent issue of Savage Sword of Conan Number 14 has a little piece of Flash Conan fiction of mine. And I've got some other things, some other irons in the fire. So yeah, I don't know. Sign up for my Substack. We'll put a link in there. Check out the Maxi Cycle to walk on worlds within the Weeping Eye, of course. And yeah, thanks, dudes. And get out there, network, be a good community, don't be dicks. And that's
May
all I
your
got to say
swords
about that.
always remain sharp.
Yeah, may your dirks always remain
Ah.
honed.
Ooh.